Long ago, I was made to understand that Palestine was not Palestine. I was also informed that Palestinians were not Palestinians. They also explained to me that ethnic cleansing was not ethnic cleansing. And when naive old me saw freedom fighters, they patiently showed me that they were not freedom fighters, and that resistance was not resistance. And when, stupidly, I noticed arrogance, oppression, and humiliation, they benevolently enlightened me, so I can see that arrogance was not arrogance, oppression was not oppression, and humiliation was not humiliation. I saw misery, racism, inhumanity, and a concentration camp. But they told me that they were experts in misery, racism, inhumanity, and concentration camps. And I have to take their word for it. This was not misery, racism, inhumanity, and a concentration camp. Over the years, they've taught me so many things. Invasion was not invasion. Occupation was not occupation. Colonialism was not colonialism. And apartheid was not apartheid. They opened my simple mind to even more complex truths that my poor brain could not on its own compute, like having nuclear weapons was not having nuclear weapons. Not having weapons of mass destruction was having weapons of mass destruction. And democracy in the Gaza Strip was not democracy. Having second-class citizens in Israel was democracy. So you'll excuse me if I'm not surprised to learn today that there were more things that I thought were evident that are not. Peace activists are not peace activists. Piracy is not piracy. The massacre of unarmed people is not the massacre of unarmed people. I have such a limited brain, and my ignorance is unlimited. And they're so fucking intelligent. Really? This conference recently, they had the slogan, "Alice, we're winning." Now, don't let's get rosy-eyed, because it's not actually that we can see the end game completely. No. One of my friends, Greta Berlin, she says that Israel is now having a massive public nervous breakdown. And it's very dangerous, of course. And it doesn't necessarily mean that in our lifetimes we will see justice. But when you look around and you see how many people are saying, what can we do? And I'm talking to people in foreign ministries. I'm talking every once in a while to foreign ministers, politicians, activists, communities all over the place, people coming over to Israel, Palestine. Everybody is saying, what is the magic trick? There is more and more to do, because BDS is kicking in. The Deutsche Bank recently just pulled out of Elbit. I was in Brussels when people were doing a big campaign on the Dexia Bank. These are all of them campaigns on their own. None of them, I think, will bring down the Israeli economy, especially once we're happily into the OECD, which has just been signed on to. But they do actually have a huge impact on public awareness. And as somebody who once lived in South Africa for about 5 years, I can tell you this is a PR war we're in. So even if people say to you, oh, the Israelis will be more aggressive or alienated because of this, you need to find ways. I can tell you that I was recently talking, in fact it was yesterday, to an old lady who used to be the head of the Socialist Party in Norway. And she's a feminist psychologist who has done a lot of work with trauma. And I said, we were talking, what can we do that is going to change this, in terms of working on the Israelis? I personally believe in outside pressure, for sure. And that's why the organization I'm with signed on, one of the first to BDS, and why we spend so much time abroad. But her message was, thinking from a psychologist's perspective, maybe everybody is doing too much, and I don't mean you, I mean the diplomatic international community, trying to reassure Israel, trying to tell them, don't worry, we care about your security. Look, we'll get you in the club, and then hoping that as friends they could have influence, or hoping that once in those clubs, everybody in Israel will start to behave according to the rules of the international games, which of course has produced even worse results because it's called appeasement in other language. And she said, maybe everybody should just leave, and leave them alone as you do a child. Now, boycott, divestment, and sanctions is doing that in a certain way, when every different diplomatic mission is asking us, what can we do? Or they are leaving, and they are pulling out ambassadors right now. The South African has just gone, the Nicaraguan has gone, the Venezuelan already left, etc., etc. Peru, I think, as well. Then you can see that people are beginning to understand everything that the international community has been doing is having the negative effect. It's creating a worse problem. There is more and more impunity. The Goldstone report needs to be implemented to save Israel from itself, so that there is a knowledge in the Israeli military especially that violence cannot always be used as the only solution. That for Israel, it is losing this PR war, and therefore, just like when you leave a child alone in a room to calm down after these tantrums, after all this spoiling, wait until it then gets the message, maybe there are things that it has to do and learn, and wants to be part of the clubs, instead of all of this overreacting that comes from all sorts of places in our psychology. You know, I was yesterday at a conference of Christian organizations talking about Jerusalem, and of course there are many people who believe that compassion means, oh gosh, come here and let me give you a big hug, or not wanting to do to somebody else what was done to you means only being soft. But I think that what we need to do is really examine what is best to solve this, and know that there is such a thing as tough love. And therefore set those borders. And therefore say to Israel very clearly, and it may be in the next generation, the university campuses in America, the Jewish kids are really starting to get this. It's going to take a lot longer in America, and we have the midterm elections, we have AIPAC still riding high. Obama is not able to fulfill. I even recommended to one person in foreign aid that maybe they should start putting money into J Street, but I don't think that would be legal. But the thing is to try to see what are the best ways of putting pressure. And in terms of what you are doing, this is setting up the networks, this is proving the success, this is getting the message out to the public. And with the Rachel Corrie going in this weekend, I think we may well see more of the same, as we have seen tragically recently, or we may be celebrating. It may not be this weekend, it may be a few days later. I think that all of this is really raising the issue, so that now you do hear the international community saying, you know what, it's time to open Gaza. You know what, these policies have failed. Uri Avneri, the leader of Gush Shalom, has an advertisement in Haaretz today saying that the Israeli policies to isolate Hamas are only managing to isolate Israel. So I do think that this is hugely effective. I think it's very serious. I certainly know that if anybody is serious on the political level, they need pressure. Obama needs to know that there are pressure groups, that he has his Code Pink on tap. I was actually lobbying with Code Pink about Goldstone on the Hill in November when I was there with people from Silvan and Sheikh Jarrah. And it's got to the point where the security guards inside Congress are coming to the Code Pink and saying, 10 minutes, come on, you better get going, from the restaurant, from the cafeteria, getting them on the Hill. So it's becoming more and more mainstream, needed. I remember very clearly when he was Minister of the Interior, Ofer Piniz-Paz, a very decent Israeli politician, there are one or two, he's since left, saying to us in a conference, give me a hard time, I need it in order to be able to balance what I'm getting from the other side. And I always remember that. And therefore, if anybody ever tells you that, don't worry, just leave it to us, keep quiet, no. They need pressure, and they need to hear from you, and they need lobbying groups. They need very much public testimony, as much high profile as possible. If anybody's on Facebook, 600 million people on Facebook, that's quite an audience, and it does have ripple effects. I don't know if anybody is here from Germany or has good contacts in Germany, but I've just come from the Eurovision Alternative Palestinian Song Contest, where Lynn Banner was singing 3 concerts. Having been kicked out of Eurovision for flying the Palestinian flag, we didn't manage to get it in front of the cameras. Big failure, 250 million people. Next year, Berlin. We now know what's needed. I don't know if we can do it, but a year ago I was telling Norwegians, so why is Israel in Eurovision? Can't you do something? They did an amazing job. It got a lot of publicity, and certainly 1,500 people spontaneously demonstrating in Oslo. I'm sure you had similar demonstrations here. Again, 750 signed on during the course of a couple of hours on Facebook that they would be attending. So we do start to have tools, and I think that this weekend will be extremely useful. I would say that the Goldstone report is something that we also have to focus on. The OECD, Israel needs to answer to it. Inside the club now, they have to abide by the rules and prove that they are worthy members. And there are enough factors that make them very unworthy members. We know something about corruption, we Israelis, but we haven't touched on the land issues of East Jerusalem or the West Bank, or even the sale of absentee property, refugee properties in Haifa, in Akka, and various other places.